Hello everybody, Spooky Sandwoman here. Thank you for checking out episode something of Seduce Me the Otome. Last episode, we met Diana again. Cool. On to the story. I scooped up my bag and headed downstairs to the dining room, seeing the boys already eating a delicious selection of food. The smell made my stomach growl wildly at the sight of food, as the sight of food drew me to walk further into the room.
Good morning, miss. Did you sleep well?
Before I could lie, hiding the incident in the back of my mind, Damien furrowed his eyebrows and stopped eating.
She's here.
The boys looked at Damien in confusion while he cursed his abilities silently in my mouth.
Damien, what's up with you? Of course she's here. She kinda owns the house.
Damien looked to me, wanting to explain for him. However, the threats that Diana gave me last night warned me to keep my mouth shut. I'm gonna avoid it. I shook my head at Damien, not wanting to talk about it. Damien sighed and looked to James. James tilted his head and furrowed his brows at Damien before looking to me.
Does anyone else live in this house?
No, just us.
And who is Diana?
Oh, Damien! My heart stopped. Damien was still able to read my mind. I couldn't help but glare at him, but he continued to press a hard, tell the truth gaze at me. I sighed. Damien was going to press the issue, so I had no choice but to speak. A girl named Diana came by last night.
Diana? Is she important?
Did she try to hurt you?
She's a succubus. That single word made the boys stop and stare at me. She looked to each boy, unsure of what was going through their minds. Should I have avoided it? I tried! I couldn't!
So, she's come to try and bring us back.
She must really be desperate.
Well, what should we do now?
Nothing. She'll give up eventually.
Will she?
The boys continued to look at me as if I knew the answer to that question. Damn it, Damien! She said that if I told you, she'd make my life a living hell. She can't possibly do that, right? She's not a devil.
No, she isn't. However, she is a very powerful demon.
She's a master of mind manipulation and has been trained in illusion. Unlike other demons who use strength to get power, she uses her charisma.
She has the power to make armies bow to her and obey her every whim. That's why she's so obsessed with us.
What? What do you mean?
Well, she sorta has family ties to us. She was promised to marry one of us in exchange for more power.
She's just some whacked up hussy who doesn't know how to close her legs. She's not a real threat.
Oh, really? I feel insulted.
The boys and I looked around the room, wondering where that voice came from. I felt cold sweat run down the back of my neck in fear, remembering what kind of power she had. At last we saw Diana by the entrance of the kitchen, juggling a single red apple in her hand as she leaned against the archway. The boys quickly surrounded me, glaring at the intruder.
So, you took up a human name as well.
Beautiful name, isn't it? Well, for a human name, anyway.
What the hell do you want?
To bring you back, of course. However, you weren't supposed to know that I was coming. I completely forgot about that little mind-reading ability. My mistake.
Diana pushed off from the archway and walked towards us, making the boys step closer to me in a protective circle. Diana laughed.
My. What has the world come to? A group of demons protecting a human girl? I'll tell you right now, she's not that pretty. And from what I can tell, she's still a virgin.
My face grew red in complete anger and embarrassment. How dare she? Nah. Diana chuckled and smirked at me, knowing that I wanted to hit her, but had control of myself.
Such control you have, human. You know your place very well.
I didn't control the growl that escaped my throat, however.
Well, will you all change your minds? I assure you, it's for the greater good.
I expected the boys to say no. What I heard was complete silence. None of the boys replied to Diana, which made me both nervous and fearful as to why. Diana leaned her head back a bit, surprised for a different reason.
No. Well, see.
Was silence truly them saying no to her? I looked around at the boys and saw the disobedience in their eyes, giving me my answer. I felt my heart flutter, especially when my eyes landed on Sam. He kept close to me, glaring daggers into Diana. I could feel that he was completely adamant in his choice to stay. I don't know what, but I was incredibly happy to know he wanted to stay. Diana sighed and pressed a finger into her temple, rubbing it gently.
Either all of you are playing a very convincing hard-to-get game, or you all must be out of your minds.
Dinah then looked to me, locking her gaze with mine as if to read me. I could tell she wanted me to do something, but the boys would stop her, so the stare was her only available action. After a small moment of silence, Diana licked her lips before breaking the gaze battle and staring to the boys around me.
Very well. I guess I'll take my leave now.
What? Her leave? Was she serious? The boys around me straightened up and grew confused looks on their faces as Diana stepped back away from us with a small bow, flaunting her cleavage. Without another word, a deep purple pentagram appeared under her feet, and Diana's body slowly sank into the floor. As her head vanished into the floor, the pentagram vanished. At once, the boys relaxed and slowly began to return to their spots on the table, each in deep thought.
She'll be back, but she won't kill us. She needs us alive.
Whatever. We'll just keep saying no. She can't force us to come back.
She can't do anything but annoy us. Eventually she'll give up.
That's the hope, anyway.
Hopefully. Sam walked over to me and placed a hand on my shoulder, looking at me with concern.
If she comes after you, you need to tell us, okay?
I nodded, knowing that he wanted to protect me. Sam gently took his hand from my shoulder and very gently moved a strand of hair from my face, however, making me blush and forget what I was thinking about. The sound of collective chuckles and playful snickers whispered through the air, making me blush even more. As Sam grunted in reply, the laughter stopped. I looked up to see that he was glaring at his brothers, a fist forming in his hand, ready to swing at one of them. He and I pulled away from each other just as the sound of Naomi's car appeared. I quickly ate my food, waved to the boys, and left, confident that nothing was going to happen. Never, ever say that nothing will happen before the day is over. I avoided talking about the ride back home yesterday, saying that the ride was a one-time thing. I'll be riding with you guys from now on, to and from school. The girls seemed very happy. We entered the school and quickly gathered our things from our lockers and headed to class. There were no events to our surprise. History wasn't exactly fun, but our teacher was great. At least he would have been great if he was in class that day. Naomi and Suzu took their seats around me. Suzu in front of me, Naomi beside me. Before the class bell rang and the class was greeted by the dean.
Students, you'll be having a substitute for class today. Everyone meet
Miss Diana.
This bitch. My heart stopped. At the door with the dean was Diana, looking over the students and smirking as her eyes laid on me. She strutted to the teacher's desk, ignoring or welcoming the whispers from the other students before sitting on the wood and crossing her legs.
Thank you, Dean. You can go now.
With a wave of Diana's hand, the dean left the classroom, closed the door, and left the area. Diana smiled at us, making my stomach turn. What was she going to do?
So, history. History, history, history. Such a silly thing, isn't it? I mean, what do we care about the past? We're in the present.
Mm-hmm. The rest of the class, including Naomi and Suzu, hesitantly nodded in agreement, unsure about this new teacher, but willing to listen to more of what she had to say.
The present is so full of wonderful things. While the labors of the past are the reason we have many things, it is our chance and privilege to utilize what has been given to us.
Her charm was almost infectious. The class was practically starting to eat out of her hand. I looked around to see classmates grinning and agreeing with Diana. I pressed my lips together as I listened further. I had no choice.
What's even funnier about human beings is that some of the bits of history we hear is either made up or completely biased to one side. It's like a story you read as a child. You hear of the princess and the prince, and they live happily ever after. But what about the family she left behind? What of her friends?
Suck a dick! Excuse me. I don't know what came over me. The students listened and agreed intently to her words. I could tell, however, that these words were all targeted at me.
The original story of the Little Mermaid. A perfect example of biased opinion.
Don't ruin my favorite Disney movie.
A girl who thinks she can be with this prince, but this prince has to marry a princess.
No, we don't.
What would happen if the mermaid had her way? What makes the mermaid so important that the princess has to suffer the consequences?
It don't matter what happens to the princess. The rest of the class turned their heads to me. Naomi and Suzu looked at me with equally surprised looks. I kept my eyes on Diana. If I was the mermaid, I wasn't gonna let the princess take my prince away. Diana stared at me before nodding and turning her body to fully face me.
Oh? And why does it not matter?
The story isn't about the princess. The story is about the mermaid and the prince.
Ah, but that is exactly my point. While the story talks about the mermaid and the prince's romance, we don't see the problems of the kingdom the prince rules. While we are all fixated with this love story, we ignore the fact the kingdom would fall apart without the marriage between the prince and princess.
She kept her eyes to me as she spoke. I knew she wanted to make her words stick in my mind, but I didn't listen. It was one thing to be a fictional story. It was another to try and ruin someone's life for selfishness. Diana chuckled and looked back to the class.
Well, luckily in the real story of the Little Mermaid, the mermaid knows that what she was doing was wrong, and she threw herself into the ocean, turning into sea foam.
Some of the students that surrounded me mumbled in surprise, obviously not knowing the real story. However, Diana was wrong again. That's not true! Once again, the class looked at me, and Diana faced me with another smile.
Not true. How so?
The trade-off for becoming human was marrying the prince or turning into sea foam. However, she was also given the choice to kill the prince and turn back into a mermaid. The mermaid didn't because she loved him and sacrificed herself for that love. That is a story worth telling. Not some princess getting her way, but of a tragedy that had befallen on a girl who only wanted love. The class applauded me, with Suzu giving me her usual punch to my shoulder and Naomi smiling at my logic. Diana, however, finally grew an almost angered face at me.
Interesting. So what you are saying is that the princess should be given no mind.
The story is not about the princess. The story is about the mermaid, and the mermaid should have gotten her prince.
Even at the risk of a kingdom falling apart?
Even if the entire world fell apart around them, duty does not overrule love, and the princess needs to realize this. Excuse me. The applause that followed intensified with whoops and hollers. I felt a wave of confidence roll through my body. And Diana wasn't going to win. I wasn't going to let her. Diana then stopped talking and looked at the clock on the wall, reading it quickly. This class had barely begun. Why was she looking at the time? Diana then leaned against the blackboard and smiled to us. I became worried.
You know what? School isn't important. Everyone, go ahead and head home. Take the week off.
The students suddenly began to chat happily or in confusion of the situation. Many thought it was a dream come true. Others knew better. Before anyone could protest, however, Diana pressed a finger to her lips and counted down with her fingers in the air. 3, 2, 1. The speakers of the classroom gently awoke, giving us an announcement we would never believe.
Attention students. Due to an emergency faculty meeting, we will be closing school for the remainder of the day and this entire week. Please leave the school quickly and quietly and have a good rest of the week.
Woohoo! She used her powers on them. Damn it. I felt the need to stop her, but how could I stop a demon in the middle of a public place? Diana smiled before gesturing to the door.
Have a nice week off. School will resume next week.
Many of the students filed out, chatting to each other about new impromptu plans. Suzu was beyond happy, but Naomi was hesitant. Before we could pack up and leave, however, Diana stepped to us.
Excuse me, little miss. I'd like you to stay a little while. There's something we need to discuss.
Oh, really? Oh, really? Oh, really? As Diana looked to Suzu and Naomi, she snapped her fingers, making my friends tense up.
You two can head home. Don't worry about your friend until next week, okay? If you contact her, she won't reply, so don't bother. If she contacts you, ignore her, because she's just fine.
As if on command, Suzu and Naomi left the room. I tried to march after them, but Diana stepped in my path, warning me with her eyes that if I followed, there would be hell to pay. I'd lost my 2 friends, at least for the week. Diana and I were alone, just like she wanted. I slammed my hands on the desk in front of me and glared at Diana. What are you doing and what are you thinking?
What? Do I not make a good teacher? I figured you should have a little lesson, so I took matters into my own hands.
Whatever you're trying to do won't work.
You really think so, dear? And what makes you so sure about that?
What was making me so sure? Why was I confident? Were the boys worth this? My thoughts began to fill with doubt. All of the uncertainties about this whole ordeal began to cloud my mind. If the boys were ever found out, there'd be hell to pay. Was it worth it? What about Diana? What would she do to me? Would she make my parents forget about me completely? Would she ruin my friends' lives out of spite? In my gut, I felt a stone of confidence try to fight back, but the heaviness of my thoughts began to dissolve that stone little by little. What was going on with me? I looked up to Diana once again to see her gaze boring into my eyes. She was using her powers on me. This time, I was away from home, so I couldn't escape. Or could I? Did I want to? The way she stared at me made me feel warm and fuzzy inside my chest. I felt like melting. Diana lifted a hand under my chin and ran her thumb over my lips, licking her own. I could feel little shots of energy zipping from under my skin into my chin where she held me.
Now, let's have a little taste of that sweet, virginal sexual energy.
Never has there been a more awkward phrase. I watched as she leaned in, ready to kiss me and take my energy. Half of my body felt elation at the idea. The other half completely rejected it and didn't want her to even touch me. Sam. Suddenly, Diana stopped in her tracks.
Sam, who is...
It then dawned on her.
Ah, one of the boys. Why don't you tell me which boy is Sam?
I felt myself nod in compliance. The third. Diana giggled in reply before letting go of my face and stepping back.
Really? The brute? With you?
Yeah, what of it? I nodded once again, but this time it was partly my own decision to reply. Diana let out a sound that mimicked a cat's purr before stepping away from me.
Alright then. Well, if it's the brute you're infatuated with, you should really rethink your romantic options.
Okay. Nah. Diana chuckled before kissing my nose, where I felt a shot of energy zap out of my body, almost making me dizzy and recoil. Diana then turned to the desk and sat on the wood, crossing her legs.
You can go now. Remember, no class for the rest of the week.
And how am I supposed to get home? My 2 friends left me here thanks to you.
Oh, were they your ride? My apologies. Let me help then.
Diana then lifted her hand and snapped her fingers. I suddenly felt the floor sink from underneath me, forcing me to look down. A purple pentagram surrounded my feet, pulling me into the ground. Before I could fight, however, I sank fully into the floor, fading into darkness and shutting my eyes. As I opened them, I felt my silk sheets around me, soothing my anxiety from the darkness that had previously surrounded me. What the... Why did Diana bring me home? Was this an illusion? Was I being tricked? Something was going on. I'm gonna end this episode off here, so thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe. Share with your friends if they like, telling teachers off? I don't know. I'm running out of clever ones for that. Alright, bye-bye!